2 years ago, National Football League quarterback Colin Kaepernick started kneeling during the national anthem to protest black people being shot by police officers, and police officers getting away with it, basically. He said, "I'm not going to stand up and show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the street and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder." The White House has repeatedly attempted to rebrand the protest as a protest of the American flag instead of against police brutality and racism in the United States. After Colin first started making his protest, he was criticized for introducing politics into sports. Many said that football was somehow sacrosanct and that it should be a place where people can rise above politics. Now, sports stars standing up for injustice is not new. For instance, John Carlos and Tommy Smith made headlines across the world when they raised the Black Power salute on the podium after winning in the 1968 Olympics. That protest brought them death threats, and they were expelled from the games. Muhammad Ali is perhaps the best-known American athlete to take a major political stand. He refused to be drafted for the Vietnam War, a refusal that involved jail time. He did so on the basis of his faith, he said, but he did note the cruel irony of asking black men to fight in Vietnam for a country that had treated them as subhuman. Most recently, national basketball players like LeBron Johnson, Kobe Bryant, and others have helped the Black Lives Matter movement pick up steam by wearing supportive t-shirts following the death of Eric Garner. In July of 2014, Eric Garner died in Staten Island, New York City, after a New York City police officer put him in a chokehold for about 15 to 19 seconds while arresting him. Now understand, New York Police Department guidelines prohibit the use of chokeholds. The officer denied choking Gardner, but the New York City Medical Examiner report stated cause of death, compression of neck, chokehold, compression of chest and prone positioning during physical restraint by police. And there are pictures online of the Gardner incident, and he's in a chokehold. After having the case for 2 months, the grand jury decided not to indict the officer. Incidents like this and many others in this country show that there's a problem in this country that need to be addressed. Colin's actions and the other players who took a knee and other actions to support him should be lauded, not denounced as unpatriotic. Using fake news, making inflammatory statements with no evidence to back them up, creating boogeymen and witch hunts to misdirect us from real social problems, which seems to be what the White House is doing, sounds a lot like McCarthyism, which infected this country in the 1940s and early 50s. We need to focus on what the real problems we face are right now. If you don't know what McCarthyism is, look it up on the internet. It was a horrible time in the United States. To eradicate a global epidemic, one must understand it. And racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, and a lot of other isms, which are based on hate, is a problem. Even while it may seem an impossible task, when it comes to racism, anti-Semitism, and other forms of bigotry, it's necessary to first identify it if we are to be successful in fighting it. More public dialogue among people regarding racism and other forms of bigotry is needed. In order to fight the epidemic of hate, we must engage faith-based communities, colleges and universities, nonprofits, and law enforcement, says Dr. Richard Gregory Johnson, professor in the Master of Public Administration program at the University of San Francisco. It'll take the intersection of allies, thought leaders, and the like to eradicate racism on a global level. But even more important is the continued attention to the problem. Even the Abbey recently was criticized for encouraging people to go out and vote, as if we monastics have given up our right to protest injustice when we see it. And you should look at the BBC's on the October 24th and October 25th if you want to know what I'm talking about. So we're getting back to Colin. Mr. Trump charges that kneeling during the national anthem is disrespectful to American servicemen and women, as do many of his supporters. I don't see it that way. And as a 20-year veteran of the United States Navy, we need to look at the problem that we're trying to address here. It's not unpatriotism, it is racism and other bigotry in this United States. What I see as a problem in this world is that others are trying to misdirect us away from what has become an incredibly polarizing and contentious issue in American life. And other people and other leaders in this world have tried to misdirect us before, and will continue to do so until we make them stop. What urgently requires our attention: immigration reform, rampant xenophobia, hate crimes in our schools and churches, and the loss of faith in the government's ability to solve pressing problems. These are the issues that need to be addressed. Sticking our heads in the sand and pretending it's something else is not going to do anything to find solutions to these earth-shaking problems. This is America. It's very patriotic to stand up, or in this case, kneel down, and say, hey, this is a problem, we need to do something about it. Until you identify something as a problem, you won't get around to saying, what can I do to help to put an end to it? So I'm going to make, at the end, a quote from a German historian. His name was Detlev Perket. He said, "The values we should aspire to are easily stated, but hard to practice. Reverence for life, pleasure in diversity and contrariety, respect for what is alien, tolerance for what is unpalatable, openness towards others, and a willingness to learn even from those who call into question one's own principles of social virtue." I like that. So what happened to Colin Kaepernick? He's not playing football right now, even though many of his supporters argue that he is good enough to be picked up by a team. He said himself last year that he was ready to play if any team was willing to hire him. None have, which is weird because he's a better quarterback than some of the current quarterbacks that are playing in the NFL, and that's my opinion.